Today we will be discussing the poem On This Day I Complete My 36th Year by Lord Byron.
He was a second-generation Romantic poet, like his close acquaintance Percy Shelley, who influenced him greatly.
The Romantics were very influenced by passion, emotion, and freedom, which is the reason for their poetry being very euphonic, as it is meant to stir up certain feelings within the listeners.
Well then, how about we read it out? Poetry is intended to be read aloud anyway.
"'Tis time the heart should be unmoved, since others it hath ceased to move. Yet though I cannot be beloved, still let me love.
My days are in the yellow leaf. The flowers and fruits of love are gone. The worm, the canker, and the grief are mine alone.
The fire that on my bosom preys is lone as some volcanic isle. No torch is kindled at its blaze, a funeral pile.
The hope, the fear, and jealous care, the exalted portion of the pain, and power of love I cannot share, but wear the chain.
But 'tis not thus, and 'tis not here, such thoughts should shake my soul nor now, where glory decks the hero's bier, or binds his brow.
The sword, the banner, and the field, glory and Greece around me see. The Spartan borne upon his shield was not more free.
Awake not Greece, she is awake. Awake my spirit, think through whom thy lifeblood tracks its parent's lake, and then strike home.
Tread those reviving passions down, unworthy manhood onto thee. Indifferent should the smile or frown of beauty be.
If thou regrettest thy youth, why live? The land of honorable death is here. Up to the field, and give away thy breath.
Seek out less of 10 sought than found, a soldier's grave, for thee the best, then look around and choose thy ground, and take thy rest.
There seems to be a particular rhythm integrated within the poem.
Yes, but it doesn't seem to follow a strict structure, only the alternating lines follow a pattern.
That makes sense, considering the Romantics enjoyed having a sense of freedom. So I would hear strictest poetry with constrictive meters, in this case iambic tetrameter.
The stressing of alternating syllables mirrors a heartbeat, linking back to the Romantics, as they were all very passionate, believing the heart is what controlled them, what kept them alive and human.
Well, since this is one of his last pieces, being written only 4 months before his death, it seems as though this poem was written as a commemoration of his life, a memoir even.
In addition to the rhythm matching a heartbeat, the fact that the word heart is one of the first introduced emphasizes its significance to him as a Romantic.
In this case, he's stressing every other meter out of the 8 in each line. For example, when he says, "'Tis time the heart should be unmoved, and yet though I cannot be beloved."
But what about the 2 lines towards the end that don't follow iambic tetrameter? Indifferent should the smile or frown, and if thou regrettest thy youth, why live? They both consist of 9 meters as opposed to 8, disregarding the pattern.
Well, he states that he's indifferent and asks, why live? He's clearly questioning, if not doubting, his will to live.
Thus reflecting his indecisiveness through the change of rhythm, insinuating a change in his heartbeat.
If you pay attention, Byron conveys a strong sense of indecisiveness throughout the poem through his use of juxtaposition. For example, when he says, "the hope, the fear," as hope is not usually associated with fear. However, as Byron is a Romantic, it comes as no surprise that he relates them, as they are both strong emotions and they tend to coexist to a certain degree.
Juxtaposition is also used in the phrase jealous care, as when you care about someone, you would want the best for them rather than be envious. "'Tis not thus, and 'tis not here," is also an example of juxtaposition, as if it isn't here or there, then where is it?
In addition to it being an example of juxtaposition, it also creates a sense of mystery, as we don't know where it is or what it seems to be missing.
Overall, this indecisiveness he conveys mirrors his train of thought, proving that he was writing without filtering his thoughts. This links back to him being a Romantic, as they did not believe in the idea of logic and restriction. If he had double thought everything before expressing it, then he would have been complying to society's norms, while Romanticism was all about rebellion and freedom of speech.
In most circumstances, expressing your deepest feelings would be seen as a sign of vulnerability. Yet in this case, it only serves to empower him. This is due to him taking ownership of the very emotions that make him human, which caused him to stand out from the rest, as in those times it seemed taboo to showcase emotion.
Furthermore, one of the main themes he explores is death, which is strengthened by his references to nature. He comments on his days being in the yellow leaf, which is the color they turn before they upsize, referencing his impending demise. This is quite paradoxical because, as a romantic, he sees mortality as a component of humanity rather than being something to dread.
Secondly, his use of these references is quite ironic, as he states that the flowers and fruits are gone. Nature is usually used to symbolize life, yet by describing it as being gone, he emphasizes the idea of death.
He refers to himself as wearing a chain, portraying the idea of restriction and creating a sense of irony. This is because he alludes to his mortality as being a constraint, although it would be anticipated that romantics embrace mortality since it is a part of humanity.
Cremation is another semantic field that is present in the poem, but it is almost a subsection in the main field of death. He connotes this through his diction, as he uses fire, torch, and funeral. This could be because the cremation of Shelley deeply affected him, and is one of the most prominent memories he has in relation to death.
Right. In fact, wasn't Shelley simply cremated for convenience and not by choice? Because then it could relate to the fact that he ends the poem by saying, "Choose thy ground," proving that he wants to have the choice that was stripped away from his beloved colleague.
In addition to that, another reason for his need for choice is because Romanticism revolves around the people's right to make their own decisions.
Another main idea conveyed by the poet is loneliness. But has he not been in many relationships?
He has, but they never ended well, perhaps leading him to the belief that he cannot be beloved. The use of cannot as opposed to am not highlights his insecurities, causing him to fear the idea of dying alone.
He also indicates his loneliness by mentioning that the worm, canker, and grief are his alone. All these words have negative connotations, adding to his belief that he's alone in his misery. He once again references his loneliness by referring to an isle, expressing his feelings of being on his own.
Wait, I think that the word isle has a double connotation, because although it does insinuate his loneliness, it also has a more literal meaning. After all, when he was in Greece, he was in Kephallonia, which is part of the Ionian Islands.
By having a double connotation, the romanticism is further explored, as everyone has their own opinions and perspectives.
He tends to list emotions and objects throughout the poem, using caesura. For instance, when he states the hope, the fear, the jealous care, and the sword, the banner. The lack of polysyndeton speeds up the pace of the poem, creating a sense of time running out as he is approaching his death. The listing effect once again connotes to the idea of him riding along to his train of thought, as he is not overly careful about the grammar or conjunctions used. In addition, during the thought process, listing occurs when one is passionate about a topic, when they have too much to say and not enough time. The idea of passion relates to romanticism, as the romantics enjoyed exploring the extent of passionate emotion, whether it be love or hate.
I agree. In reality, this passion is shown throughout the poem. It may not be as obvious as it is not solely about love, but it is there. The most obvious example of his passion is in relation to war and being in battle. This relates to the poet as Byron helped the Greeks in their battle for independence as a commander. He was not only preaching the ideals of the Romantics, but actually fighting for them, for freedom and revolution.
It does, in fact, come as a surprise that he is willing to up to the field and give away thy breath during Greece's independence war. As he had only lived there for under a year, yet he has enough passion and commitment to die for it. This could be because Greece is where he found comfort after exiling himself from the UK. He seems to be having difficulty deciding where his real home is, as proven by his indecisiveness in regards to where he wants to die. The use of paralake and strike home conveys his feeling of not belonging.
Right, as by the use of the word strike rather than to simply return, he depicts his lack of time and the action must be taken in order to awake his spirit. By attempting to rally and awake his spirit, he is hinting that he's losing patience and passion with the war, as though he wants to end it solely for him to be able to die at peace, in his home. The word home has connotations of comfort and warmth, thus discombobulating the poet, as although he is not from Greece, that is where he feels the safest.
He finally seems to decide that he wants to stay in Greece and die in battle, as illustrated by the strong imagery created by him mentioning that around him he will see the sword, the banner, and the field. He seems to be accepting this, as death will most likely occur during battle, and those will be the last items he will see. In addition to him accepting his death, he is accepting Greece as his land, a place for him to protect.
Perhaps some of the appeal of dying in battle is that it is seen as an honorable death, illustrating him as an honorable man, a war hero even. After all, he didn't have the best reputation in his past. Wait, he uses the phrase unworthy hero to describe himself indirectly. even though fighting for one's country is arguably one of the most worthwhile acts any man can commit. Actually, if I remember correctly, he only became commander due to his financial and political support to the war, which caused the Greeks to gain a lot of respect for him. However, he hasn't had any military experience, thus making him feel as though he hadn't earned his title and making him unworthy of the role.
In addition to Byron's strong passion for war and rebellion, he also believes that some things are inexplainable. The fact that he concludes the poem by saying, "And take thy rest," reflects his main belief as a romantic, that there is a chance life may not end once his corporal body dies.
So, since he spent his last birthday writing this poem, we'd like to celebrate it by commemorating his death.
Well, then how about we bake him a cake?
For the rest of you, we have cupcakes with the main ideas of the poem written on them, in Greek.
These ideas are memoir, acceptance, life, death,
Loneliness, passion, home, and war.
We considered printing these words out, but since the Romantics were against industrialism, we decided it'd be better to try and write them ourselves.
As, even if they aren't perfect, imperfection is a part of humanity.
Thank you for watching our presentation.